Hey guys, hope that all is well. Hopefully you guys are all doing fine and are staying healthy at home. Sorry if you guys are getting some background noise. They're cutting trees over here in the background behind my house. So what I want to do today is I just want to go over the quiz quickly. Last quiz of the cycle 4 that you're going to have this week. It's just going to be on surface area and volume of a sphere. So just remember, surface area is always what's on the outside of a figure. Volume is always what's on the inside of a figure. So what we're going to be dealing with again, just a few questions on a sphere, finding the surface area of the sphere and finding the volume of the sphere, right? And the only thing we ever have when dealing with the sphere is a radius, right? So let's say that the radius in this case is going to end up being 5 centimeters, right? If I wanted to find the surface area, because you're going to have two questions dealing with finding surface area, you would just use the formula for surface area, which is 4 pi r squared. And again, surface area, you're just trying to find how much material in essence would be outside of that sphere. How much material would be on like a soccer ball or a basketball. So whenever we're doing this, the only thing that we have for a sphere, the only variable that we could ever utilize is the radius. Because when you're dealing with the radius, when you're dealing with the sphere, the only thing that you have is a radius, because everywhere from the center, it's always going to be the same amount. So every radius is going to be 5, right? So we know that the radius is 5 centimeters. And in doing that, we just substitute it. So it's going to be 4 pi. We know that the radius in this case is 5. And then we have squared. So all I did was just substitute, right? You have 4, you have pi. You know that the radius is 5. And then we have the squared. And so before you start multiplying, before you deal with the 4, the pi, deal with the exponents just for order of operation. So when you have 5 squared, you know that 5 squared means 5 times 5. Be careful though, because 5 squared, sometimes people make the mistake of 5 times 2. 5 squared is 5 times 5. So we know that 5 times 5 is 25, right? And again, all I did was I did 5 squared, 5 times 5, which gave us 25. Bring down the pi, and also bring down the 4. Because once you have that, it becomes a lot easier to deal with. And now what you can do is, before you even deal with the pi, you can multiply the numbers. And since you know that there's no plus sign, no minus sign, no division sign anywhere, when it's all together, it's always multiplication. So we're going to do 4 times 25, which gives us 100. Don't forget the pi. And again, I got the 100 because what I did was 4 times 25, which gave us 100. And now we have 100 times pi. To make life easier, instead of dealing with pi, we can just utilize 3.14, right? 3.14. And all I did was, again, instead of using pi, I just substituted 3.14 just because it makes it a lot easier to use. And now all we're going to do is multiply 100 times 3.14. Because when you multiply 100 times 3.14, now you're going to get 314. Again, don't forget, since it's centimeters, you're going to do centimeters. And since you're dealing with surface area is always squared. Right? So 314 centimeters squared. We didn't have a decimal in this case just because it worked out perfectly this way. But every time you're dealing with this, you always just want to follow the formula, do the exponent first, and then multiply it out. So if we're talking about a sphere, 314 represents how much is actually on the outside of that sphere. And we're using squared again because it's surface area. You're going to have 2 of those on the quiz on Thursday. Now, you're going to also have 2 that's going to ask you to find the volume, right? And the volume sometimes is the one that people have an issue with. It could get a little trickier. But I just want to show you, because again, if you follow the same steps, it's always the same process. Let's say that the radius in this case is going to end up being, I don't know, let's use 3 centimeters, right? So let's say that the radius is 3 centimeters. If we want to find volume, we know that the formula for volume is 4 over 3 pi r cubed, right? And again, only thing that we ever have whenever we're dealing with the sphere is always the radius. In this case, the radius is going to end up being 3, right? And now, just go through the steps like we did the other day, right? We know that the radius in this case is 3 centimeters. So we're going to rewrite this, but now we're going to utilize 3 for the radius. So we have 4 over 3. We have pi. We know that the radius in this case is 3. and then we have to the third power, which again, we'll go over that quickly. But all I did so far, kept the 4 over 3, kept the pi, kept to the third, and the only thing we did was just substituted the radius for 3. Now before you deal with the 4 divided by 3, before you deal with the pi, let's take care of the 3 to the third power. And what we know is whenever you're dealing with 3 to the third power, it means that you're going to multiply 3 times 3 times 3. 3 to the third literally means that you're going to do 3 times 3 times 3. Just like when you have 3 to the second power. 3 to the second power means you do 3 times 3 because it's 3 2 times. When it's 3 to the third power, it means you have 3 times, right? If you had, let's say for example, if you had 4 to the third power, it would mean that you would do 4 times 4 times 4. That you would have 4 3 times, right? So again, just wanted to show you with a different number. But what we can do now is just figure this out. So we know 3 to the third means 3 times 3 times 3. We know that 3 times 3 is 9, right? And now we still can't forget that last 3. And we know that 9 times 3 gives us 27, right? And all I did was just 3 times 3 times 3, right? 3 times 3 is 9. 9 times 3 is 27. So to make our lives a lot easier, we have everything the same, right? We still have 4 over 3. We still have pi. But now we know that 3 to the third, 3 times 3 times 3 is 27, right? Because now once you have this, all of this becomes a lot easier. Because again, there's another way to do this, but since I'm not there to help you guys see it in person, I don't want to confuse you. So what we can do is we can actually divide these to make life easier, right? So if you were to do 4 divided by 3, 4 divided by 3 gives you 1.33. And again, just try to use 2 decimal places to make it a lot accurate. Instead of using pi, we can use 3.14, right? And then we still have the 27, right? And all I did was 27 stayed there, right? Pi was 3.14, and then the 4 divided by 3 gave us 1.33, right? That's where all those numbers came from. 4 divided by 3 was 1.33, pi was 3.14, 27 stayed the same. And now that you have all these numbers, what you can do, since again, they're all next to each other, no addition, no subtraction, just multiply them all, right? So we can do 1.33 times 3.14, right? 1.33 times 3.14, which gives us 4.176. But I'll just round it to 4.18, right? And again, where I got that number from, I just did 1.33 times 14, right? I did that times that, and it gave us that number, right? 1.33 times 3.14 gave us 4.18. Can't forget the 27 though, guys. So bring down the 27 there, right? So now 1.33 times 3.14 gave us 4.18. Now you want to do 4.18 times 27, right? And when you do 4.18 times 27.18, 4.18 times 27, it gives us 112.86. 112.86. And again, don't forget, we're dealing with centimeters, right? And since it's volume in this case, can't forget the cubed, right? But that's all it is. It is a lot more complicated when you compare to surface area of a sphere. But once you get over the decimals and once you get over the 3 to the third, it becomes a lot easier to deal with. Sorry about that. Again, just don't forget, volume is always to the third. Volume represents how much is in that sphere. So in that sphere, we have 112.86 centimeters cubed. And just remember, once you change that, it becomes 27. If you want to change 4 divided by 3 to 1.33, once you even get it to this point, if you want to, you can just do 1.33 times 3.14 times 27, and it will give you that answer. Again, guys, you're going to have 6 questions on the quiz. One that's going to ask you what surface area is. Remember, surface area is always what's on the outside of a figure. Volume is always what's on the inside of a figure. You're going to have 2 questions that's going to ask you to find the surface area of a sphere, and you're going to have 2 questions that ask you to find the volume of a sphere. Don't forget, the formulas are all on Pearson Realize. I always upload the sheet with all the formulas. Feel free to use it. Feel free to use my videos. Any questions, feel free to reach out, guys. Hope you all do well. Take care. Stay safe. Bye.